Hello, everybody. This is Daniel. Welcome to the Gator Truth Florida Football Podcast. Today, we're going to look at the defensive position groups and the special teams position groups, and I will tell you which ones will be better in 2022 than they were in 2021. We're looking at the position groups so we can see where the Florida Gators are at this time, where we believe they will be, so we can fairly look at the schedule and see how they stack up against their opponents during the 2022 football season. Just as in the last episode, I'd like to take a look at some statistics for the Florida Gators defense in 2021 and the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns defense in 2021 as they are bringing Patrick Toney over as the defensive coordinator. He will be joined by Sean Spencer, aka Coach Chaos, in his defensive coordinating role. Last season, the Florida Gators defense was 51st in the nation, allowing 367.8 yards per game. That is broken down between a 25th finish in passing D, allowing 203.9 yards per game, and 85th in rushing D, allowing 169 yards per game. In Louisiana, Patrick Toney's defense was 22nd in the nation, allowing 334.6 yards per game. His passing defense was tied with Georgia for 13th in the nation, allowing 190.1 yards per game, and Louisiana was 54th against the rushing attack, allowing 144.5 yards per game. Just like in the offensive statistics, turnovers is one that you can really point to between the difference in the two defenses, just as you could with the two offenses. The Gators last year had 13 takeaways, good enough for 112th in the nation. However, Louisiana had 23 takeaways, good enough for 19th. Billy Napier's team seemed to focus on A, taking care of the ball on offense, and B, taking the ball away on defense is a good sign for this team moving forward. Last year, UF, as I said, was the 51st ranked defense in the nation. And had they not really blown up the game after Todd Grantham got fired and allowed Samford to put up a bunch of yards, had they just allowed their averages, not even played like you really should do against a team like Samford, then they would have been a top 50 defense. Is that really that important in the long run? We'll see. But I can tell you there are certain things that help me believe that we'll get better. And I know there's also an argument out there. Our pass D was partially as good as it was because the run D was so bad and teams didn't feel like they needed to pass to beat us. However, we held Alabama under 250 yards passing while keeping their run offense to less than 100 yards in that game. Patrick Toney inherits 9 players with starting experience, and that is the basis for which we'll begin looking at this defense. The first position that we're going to look at today is the defensive tackle position. Now, it's no secret, if you look at the defensive tackle position, look at the depth chart, there really is not much there. This is probably the thinnest position on the team, and for that reason, I do believe that the defensive tackle position will be worse. I believe Coach Chaos is a step up. However, right now, I do think just pure number of bodies is something he's going to have a hard time with. We lost Valentino, we lost Newkirk, we lost Truesdale from last year. We do have Gervon Dexter returning, who, let's be honest, he's a beast. Last year, he was 5th on the team in tackles, and he had 2.5 sacks. Pro Football Focus rated him the 2nd in SEC for stops among defensive tackles. Let's look at some of the depth that we do have. Jalen Lee, when I was listening to a player interview recently, was named as a guy by one of his teammates that said he's a guy to watch on this defensive line, a guy that I believe will surprise someone. We also have Big Des Watson, a guy who came in around 400 pounds. Last year, got some experience. Heck, in the Alabama game, comes in on that goal line stand. I'm in the south end zone, right behind the plays going on. Des Watson held his own against that Alabama line. They even had to try and cut block him to reduce his effectiveness. We also have a guy like Chris Mcclellan coming in as a true freshman who wouldn't be the first true freshman that Florida has needed to perform. Heck, in the past, you think back to 2007, we've had Mike Pouncey came in as an offensive lineman and for depth purposes played at defensive tackle a little bit that year. Gervon Dexter, also in 2020, had to play as a true freshman and did well. Now, could Mcclellan play that well? Could he be solid? That is yet to be seen, but I do believe he's going to get in the rotation again due to lack of bodies. We also have guys like Humphreys, who's a redshirt junior, that maybe Chaos can help him get back to his potential, help him be a solid depth piece as we've seen from Marlon Dunlap, Adam Schuler, and guys like that over the last few years. Moving on to the defensive end position, I do believe it'll be about the same in 2022 as it was in 2021. Again, Coach Chaos coming in, I believe that will help. We do lose Zach Carter and his 8 sacks, which is one of the highs of the team. However, 4 of those sacks were in the FAU, USF, and Samford game. That's not to knock him, but to say his production in the SEC was not quite where we want it. And we do return Princely Umeaman, who according to Pro Football Focus was 3rd among edges in the pass rushing grade last season. We also have a guy like Tyreek Sapp, who looked great in the orange and blue game, and he's a guy who many people say could have a breakout year. With the two of them, I do believe that that position will be at least as good as last year, and there are other factors we'll get into that I believe will help them out. Moving on to the jack or buck position, I do believe that this position will be better in 2022 than it was in 2021. This position is also considered to be the outside linebacker position in Patrick Toney's defense. Gator legend Mike Peterson takes over as the coaching role from Christian Robinson. A notable loss would be we did lose Bogle. However, we do return former 5-star Britain Cox. Last year led the team with 8.5 sacks. 5 of those sacks were in his last 2 games. There are 2 ways to look at that. One, he could have been building momentum towards the end of the game or end of the season, or he took advantage of some teams that weren't quite as talented. I think it's a little bit of both. I do believe that the scheme and this coaching staff will get more out of him. A big question I do have is, will Britain Cox be a force against the run? One thing we've seen through the years is he hasn't been as great at setting the edge from his position as he needs to be. I do think with the focus on fundamentals that we've heard of throughout the spring, that is one thing we will see from Britain Cox. I do think he can get up to at least 10 sacks this year. I do believe this is the year he finally lives up to that 5-star rating and really performs in the SEC. For depth at the position, we do have Antoine Powell-Ryland, who did show flashes last year. He had a sack and a half in 2021, but he's also shown some other good qualities. Another guy who had to do a double take on in the spring, Lloyd Summerall, looked jacked, and I believe he's ready to contribute. He's a guy that has been around for a few years. I believe his coaching staff will help him take the next step. For the defensive line as a whole, as we could consider these positions the defensive line, I do want to talk about how some of the scheme will help them be better, including the defensive tackles in a way in 2021. I don't believe I mentioned earlier, but how are you going to block a Des Watson and a Gervon Dexter in the middle? Both will command double teams. If you're using 4 linemen, that's going to leave 2 guys to be blocked either one-on-one by a tackle, or you're going to need a tight end, a running back, or a combination thereof. I do also believe that the back end of the defense will help buy time for this line to get to opposing quarterbacks. We'll go over that a little bit more a little later. Moving on to the interior linebackers, I do believe they'll be better in 2022 than they were in 2021. Jay Bateman takes over for Christian Robinson as far as the inside linebackers coach. Things we did lose from 2021, we lost Mahmoud Diabate to the Utah Utes. We lost Tyrone Hopper to the Missouri Tigers. And we lost Jeremiah Moon to graduation. Outside of Tyrone Hopper, Diabate and Moon are not naturally inside linebackers, although the three of them were the top tacklers in 2021. However, what college football taketh away, college football kind of giveth. In 2022, Ventrell Miller returns after being injured during the USF game last year. He was the top tackler in 2020. Amari Burney also returns. He was the number 2 linebacker in tackles in 2020. He did not play quite as much last year, and let's be honest, he's been up and down. However, I do believe a guy like Patrick Toney, a guy like Bateman, and also Mike Peterson to a point can get Burney to at least a higher level of play than we have seen from him. As far as depth at the inside linebacker position, we have Derek Wingo, who had plenty of game time in 2021. We have DeJuan Black, who had a great spring. I enjoyed him in the orange and blue game. One thing, I don't want to be seeing the silly penalties we saw from him when he was on special teams last year sometimes. One thing that has me excited about this unit is the emphasis on tackling that we have heard about this new staff having. One thing we can say over the past few years, not just in 2021, is that tackling has been a problem. Even at the inside linebacker position, lots of missed tackles. The emphasis here on the tackling, on fundamentals, will help these guys. Just that little thing, take them up a notch. Like we talked about, Amari Burney has been up and down. He's really been a great teammate, a guy who's really tried for the orange and blue. I do want to say I believe the best players will play. So if Amari Burney's out there, I do believe, the coaches believe, he is the best player. I do not believe we are in a spot where it is seniority like it was in the past. And if he's not performing, he will be replaced. And if he's not, then we'll start asking questions then. But for now, I'm going to believe that this coaching staff has Burney in a position where he can succeed. I do think that we'll see plenty of guys like Wingo and Black, as well as the linebackers rotate. Moving to the outside to the cornerback position, I do believe it'll be about the same as it was in 2021. I know that's hard to say when we lose a guy like Kyrie Elam, who is a first-round draft pick, but hear me out. Corey Raymond comes in to coach the cornerbacks. There is not a better cornerback coach in college football than Corey Raymond. We also return Jason Marshall, who had the lowest completion percentage in the SEC against him, and he did that as a true freshman. We also have Helm returning, who last year was a redshirt freshman, playing plenty of downs in 2021, and I believe he may have given up 2 touchdown passes throughout the season. I think that's pretty good for a redshirt freshman myself. And you see many people talking about how he may have the best raw skills of any of the corners. Raymond will help hone those raw skills into developed skills. We also have Jaden Hill returning. He missed 2021 due to injury, but he had plenty of experience in 2020. We also have newcomers like Jalen Kimber, who transferred in from Georgia, who had an impressive orange and blue game and showed plenty of technique. Using the sideline as another defender, press, staying close, lots of good things we saw from him. I also believe that the scheme will be helping out these cornerbacks, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Moving to the nickel position, I believe the nickel position will be better in 2022 than it was in 2021. Part of that is they return the top 2 nickelback players that we had last year in Trevez Johnson and Jadarius Perkins. Johnson, he's had mixed results, but he does have a ton of experience. Last year when Perkins was in, he did pretty well. He did miss a spring with some injuries. These 2 guys both could be good, and it's good to have depth where they can rotate in and out. I also want to talk about who is behind them. Jordan Young, a guy who in the spring game I think might have been my defensive MVP. This guy from the nickelback position as a redshirt freshman sees the receiver get the ball just beyond the line of scrimmage or beyond the line of scrimmage, runs up, not fearing contact, decides to make contact, and secured the tackle. That is something we cannot say for everybody that we've seen on this team, especially in the secondary for recent years. A lot of the time we'll see the throw the shoulder and hope they go down, but that's not what we saw. What we saw from Jordan Young is secured tackles. And if I'm seeing that from him, how much more will we probably see it from other members of the secondary? Let's finish off the look at the defense by taking a look at the safety position. Patrick Toney is coming in for Wesley McGriff and coaching the safeties. We do return our top two safeties from last year in Rashad Torrance II and Trey Dean III. Pro Football Focus has Rashad Torrance II as one of their top 5 safeties on their big board for the 2023 NFL Draft. Trey Dean has played multiple positions at Florida, and although at times he's appeared inconsistent, I do have to question how much of his inconsistency has been due to playing multiple positions as a true freshman. He was playing cornerback as a sophomore. He was playing nickelback, and then he moved to safety. And how much of that is he was playing in a Todd Grantham defense? So I'm not ready to write him off yet. I know some people are. I think that's wrong. Give the guy a chance to show you what he's about. There's a reason why he was a highly coveted recruit coming out of high school. Now, for the rotation at safety, we do have some newcomers, at least to the rotation, in Donovan McClellan, who had an interception in the spring game, Kamar Wilcoxon, who was injured through last year, Corey Collier, who was a former top 150 recruit, and Rivals had him listed as a 5-star, and of course, last year's big 5-star signing, Kamari Wilson. Just like at linebacker, I do believe the best players will play under this coaching staff, and it won't be a matter of seniority. So if I see Rashad Torrance II out there, if I see Trey Dean III out there, if I see Kamari Wilson as a true freshman out there, I do believe it's because the coaches believe he's the best player. Again, this is not the last coaching staff that seniority trumped all. Looking at each position, I do believe with the experience at safety, with the talent and experience at linebacker, with the talent and experience at the cornerback position, at the nickelback position, at the defensive end positions, and Gervon, this will be a much better defense in 2022 than we saw in 2021. Now, let me get to the scheme for just a minute. Patrick Toney has some great videos on YouTube showing how his scheme works. One thing that he emphasizes is proper techniques for his defensive backs. Go watch these videos. They'll really explain what I'm talking about. But with these proper techniques, our defensive backs will cause smaller windows for the quarterback to throw in. And with smaller windows to throw in, that means the quarterback's going to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. And if the quarterback's hanging on to the ball a little bit longer, that gives the defensive line a little bit more time to get to him. Going back to our math from last week, a 5-second 40 is approximately 8 yards per second. If that quarterback holds on to the ball for an extra half a second, that's approximately 4 yards or 2-3 yards that a guy could get to the quarterback, or at least get close enough for a hurry, for a hit, maybe get close enough to get a hand up, bat the ball down. And if you're batting the balls in there, if you're hitting the quarterback, if you're getting pressure, you're going to cause errant throws. And errant throws lead to turnovers. Turnovers lead to points. And that's what I think will really help out this team, is just that scheming and doing things that make sense. We probably won't see things like we saw last year from Todd Grantham's defense, where a linebacker on the right side of the defensive formation has to cover someone who's going out for a pass lined up on the left side of the defensive formation, because that allows for quick throws and for first downs and doesn't give the defensive line time to work. Again, this is a symbiotic defense. What the defensive line does helps out the secondary. What the secondary does will help out the defensive line, and the linebackers will help out where necessary. Let's take a quick look at the special teams, which I do believe all units on special teams will be better in 2022 than they were in 2021. A good indicator of that is that Billy Napier refers to special teams as the game changer positions, where Greg Knox, I'm not quite sure what he was doing. For the kicking game, last year we missed 2 PATs. The first one against Bama probably cost us that game. I do believe if that game goes into overtime, Florida wins that game. The other one was against LSU, and on Anthony Richardson's first touchdown drive, he ran in a 2-point conversion, negating the impact of that missed PAT. We did also miss 5 field goals in 2021, one of which was in the Kentucky game, which that field goal was blocked, returned for a touchdown, 9-point swing. The Gators also missed one early against the Georgia Bulldogs, and that changed the mindset for the rest of the game for Dan Mullen. Because after we missed that field goal, next trip down, we end up at 4th and 13 in roughly field goal range, and instead of trying to kick a field goal, getting points on the board, we went for it at a low odds, 4th and 13, because we did not trust our kicker. Trace Mack, he should be better than either guy we had last year. And in the spring game, we had a happy surprise with Adam Mihalek, who hit a 48-yard field goal and a 52-yard field goal. Punting will also be better. Jeremy Crawshaw, 44.1 yard average last year. I do look for that to go up. Some of that is we're punting after gaining lots of yards. And so what would happen? He didn't have as much room to boom it. He did have some bad kicks. He did have some good kicks. But as he progresses in his experience, so should he progress in his ability. For the kick return team, I'm honestly not sure what we're going to do. Last year, Malik Davis led the team with 14 returns, and Weston had 3, and Henderson had 2. I'm not sure we'll see Weston or Henderson back there, or anyone else could take it. I am surprised since we lost Bowman, since we lost Finley Graham. Those were 2 of the guys I would think we'd have back there, so I can't wait to see what we'll do. But since it wasn't that special, averaging 22.8 yards per return last season, I could see it being better on principle alone. For the punt return game, maybe Xavier Henderson returns punts. Maybe we go to a new guy. He only averaged 6.8 yards on 24 returns in the punt return game. One thing I hope to see, if you're considering this the game changer position, is more block attempts. When you go for a punt block, things are going to happen, including they're going to have to keep more people in the block so you don't block the punt. When they keep more people in, that means less people gunning for the return man. And if there's less people gunning for the return man, that is more space for the return man to work. And that's all if you don't block the punt. If you do block the punt, you've just flipped the field and you may end up with a touchdown. So please, Billy Napier, anyone that may somehow listen to this, please go for the blocks. Before I wrap it up here, I do want to say some thank yous. As a general one, thank you for everyone who listened to our first episode, who downloaded on Apple Podcasts, and those who may have listened via YouTube, and for everyone who provided feedback. For some specific thank yous, I do want to give a shout out to my brother, who you can find on Twitter at Gators34711, who helped me start the podcast. He was going to be my co-host and maybe in the future, but unfortunately life just is not allowing him right now. I would also like to thank my friend Mark, who helped design my logo. I'd also like to say thanks to Ox from GatorChatter.com. He's the owner and operator of the website, and the website is a Gators message board for Gator fans by a Gator fan, and it is your Gators sports bar message board. And thank you to everyone on that message board for your feedback and your encouragement throughout both the years and through starting this podcast. Also, a shout out to Blue Orange Gator on Twitter. I don't even know the guy. He took the time to listen to some of my test episodes, give me feedback, and I do appreciate that. I also want to give a shout out to the guys at Respect Our Decision podcast. I don't know them, they don't know me, but when I had questions about things like who do you use as a podcast host, they answered me quickly, they gave me good advice, and they've helped me reach out to more Gator fans than I thought was possible. Give them a listen if you had not. Once again, that is Respect Our Decision. You can find them on Apple Podcasts. And finally for today, I want to give a shout out to Swamp Doc 98. He's a guy who has definitely given me lots of feedback throughout the years. We don't always agree on what Gator football is, but we do know that each other comes from an informed place. And I gotta say, I respect the guy as a knowledgeable Gator fan, even if we don't always see eye to eye. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Can't wait to see the feedback on this episode. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on YouTube, however you would like. Next week, we'll begin our look at the Florida Gators 2022 football schedule, and I'll tell you how the Gators have a path to victory in each game. With that said, thank you everybody, and as always, go Gators.